Welcome back. You're watching KTN Newsdesk. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now focus our attention at the coast on that story of the 14-year-old Kwekwe Mwandaza who was killed in August 2014 by police officers. The High Court in Mombasa found 2 police officers guilty of manslaughter and jailed them for 7 years each. However, human rights groups have appealed that sentence. And let's now speak to Francis Mtalaki, who is at the coast. Francis, thank you for joining us. And what delivery was made today by the appellate court in the coast?
Well, Akisa, the Court of Appeal, which was sitting here in Mombasa earlier today, upheld that decision that was reached by the High Court Judge Justice Martin Muya. And this is with relation to the later Kwekwe Mwandaza, who died in 2014, August, that is. And speaking on the issues that came out, that the reason as to why they upheld that decision, one of the reasons was there were things that were not adding up. Remember the 2 suspects, one which is the former DCIO from Kinango, Veronica Gitahi, had claimed that they had some scrapping sounds in the house where the late Kwekwe Mwandaza was living in and was left by her uncle. And while visiting the house, the judge from the High Court, Justice Martin Muya, said that the house was made of makuti and mud, and so it was difficult for the scrapping sounds to be heard. And another issue is the way they use their firearms with regard to the National Police Act and the Constitution. They say that the police use excessive force for that matter. And with regard to the evidence that was brought before the court, that there were a total of 13 police officers divided in 2 groups, and so there could be no reason as to why they could not be able to disarm the late Kwekwe Mwandaza. And so that was the 2 reasons that were reached, the 2 reasons as to why the Court of Appeal that was sitting here in Mombasa arrived at that decision. And maybe we could have some of the clips that transpired at the court earlier today.
The finding that PW4 was not in the house at the material time puts paid to the appellant's claim regarding the male voice in the house that allegedly threatened to kill a person. The other thing which does not appear to add up at all regards the alleged scrapping sound which they took for the panga being sharpened. This sound was allegedly against the wall of a house, yet when the learned judge visited the house in Ko, he found that the house to be a makuti, thatched mud house. Persuaded that the learned judge had in finding that the use of lethal force by the police officer in the circumstances of this case was not proportional to the threat that they allegedly faced, and that the killing of the deceased was contrary to the National Police Service Act and therefore lawful killing, justifying conviction for the offense of manslaughter. As regards the sentence that was imposed, we reiterate that sentencing entails exercise of discretion by the trial court, and this court is slow to interfere with such an exercise unless it's satisfied that it was not exercised judiciously. The appellant was sentenced to serve 7 years imprisonment. The prescribed sentence for manslaughter is life imprisonment. The learned judge made elaborate sentencing notes and took into account the prescribed sentence, the fact that the appellants were first offenders, their personal circumstances, and the many years they had served in the police service, the prevalence of cases of unjustified use of lethal force by the police, the victim impact as statement by the mother of the deceased, and the fact that the deceased was a young girl.
And so that was Justice Asika Mahinda delivering the judgment with regard to the late Kwekwe Mwandaza. And so that means that the 2 suspects, one who is the former DCA from Kinango, Veronica Gitahi, will have to serve the sentence of 7 years in jail. From me, it's back to studio. Akisa.
Francis, thank you very much for joining us. Francis Mtalaki, our Coast Region reporter there. And let's now go back to politics. And we were focusing on Jubilees strategy to win the August 8th general election. The party has identified 17 counties as core Jubilee zones and identified 13 swing vote counties and the remaining 17 as core NASA zones. Let's look at these regions and then analyze them for you with the political analyst Martin Ndati, who will be joining us in a bit from our city center studios. So Jubilee maps out its strongholds, and this is how it looks like. Counties like Meru, Laikipia, Kiambu, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nyandarua, Nyeri. These are said to be core zones for Jubilee, where they are sure they will get landslide votes come the August 8th polls. And there are about 17 counties which they say they are completely sure they will get landslide votes from. Other counties, especially in the Rift Valley region, where Vice President, Deputy President William Ruto comes from, Nandi, Baringo, Kericho, Bomet, West Pokot, and Mandera County. And this, of course, is what a Jubilee strategy looks like in terms of areas where they're sure they will get very many votes. So let's take a look at the opposition. NASA, these are their core areas. Mombasa, Kwale, Machakos, Kakamega, Vihiga, Bungoma, Busia, most of them Nyanza region, the coast region and the western region. That is where the NASA leaders or the NASA strongholds are for NASA. But interestingly, there are also about 13 counties that are said to be swing counties. And of course, it's a continuation on some of the NASA counties, the counties that are said to be where they will get landslide votes. But let's just take a look at the said swing counties, the zones that are said to be swing counties. Nairobi being one of them, being a Nairobi, Garissa, Wajir, Marsabit, Kajiado, Kisii, Nyamira, Samburu and Trans Nzoia. All right, let's now speak to political analyst Martin Ndati, who's joining us live from the I&M studio. Martin, thank you very much for speaking to us. And this particular list has been going round, and the bone of contention has been on the swing votes. Do you think, as an analyst, do you think this is the right interpretation of how votes could go come August 8th?
Yes, Akisa, I think when you look at those numbers, basically the Jubilee has mapped out the counties which they won last time. And you know, around Mount Kenya, the counties around Mount Kenya predominantly voted Jubilee in the last election. If you go to Rift Valley, the Kalenjin counties also, which are Kalenjin dominated, they also voted Jubilee because of William Ruto. Then you have NASA mapping out Western Kenya, the former Western province, which is where Musalia and Wetangula come from. Then you have counties in Nyanza, which is where Raila Odinga comes from. Then you have the coast, which has been solid in the opposition. So those are the 17 each. Then you talk about Kisii. Kisii has two counties, which is Kisii and Nyamira. In the last election, 60-70% voted for Raila. Then the other 30% went to Ruto. So that is one of the counties they are calling swing, but it tilts towards the opposition, which is NASA. Then you talk about Narok. Narok, Raila took it, but Uhuru also got a substantial percentage of votes, about 46%. But Raila won the popular vote with a difference of about 9,000. Then Kajiado is also considered swing, but Kajiado was won by Uhuru, but Raila also got a substantial number of votes. Then there are the other ones in Northeastern. Some of them voted opposition, some of them voted Jubilee. So those are the ones they are looking at as swing.
Most of the counties that are being looked at as swing are in the northeastern region. We have Garissa, Wajir, Marsabit, Isiolo, Turkana, Samburu. Most of them are the northeastern parts of this country. Is this where the real battle would be? And there's also a very interesting figure here, Trans Nzoia County.
Trans Nzoia is interesting, Akisa, because when you look at the demographics in Trans Nzoia, there is a substantial block of the Luyas from mostly the Bukusu sub-tribe of the Luya, but there are also the other communities. Then we have Kalenjins who are also occupying quite a number of the constituencies. Then you have the other small communities like Kisi, which have also settled in, and of course the Kikuyus. So that is why they are considering it swing. But it's predominantly Luya, and the war will have to be fought between Eugene Wamalwa, who is leaning towards Jubilee, and his brigade, which was formerly New Ford Kenya. Then you have Wetangula, who is in Ford Kenya, and who has a governor there, who will also now be trying to see if they can retain control over that. But there is a substantial block of the Kalenjin vote, and then the other communities. So depending on how the formations play out, that will be considered one of the swing counties. Then you have counties like Isiolo. You have Isiolo, they will be looking at the clan issues also come into play, and also how the main political players in that area are aligned. Then you have Turkana. In 2013, Turkana was basically leaning towards the opposition, because Nanok, who is the governor, is an ODM member. Then you had Munyes, who was a senator, who was elected second senator. He was in Ford Kenya, but he has since shifted to Jubilee. So now he is vying for, this time he's running for governor. So that will have to play out. Then you have West Pokot. West Pokot, there is Lenyangapuo, who is a current senator. He's Kanu. But Kanu has indicated that they might support Jubilee. But there are people in Kanu like Nick Salat who have not, who seem to be keen on supporting NASA. So once they resolve where Kanu will be, then now that is where West Pokot will have to go, because West Pokot has a heavy presence of Kanu. And you know, West Pokot neighbors Baringo. And Baringo is predominantly controlled by Kanu, which is under the hold of retired Mzee Moi and the Kanu chairman, Gideon Moi. So depending on which formation Kanu decides to be part of, then Baringo and West Pokot will go where the Kanu leadership decides that which formation they will be part of. But it's highly likely that they will agree to work with Jubilee, because Mzee Moi has been very keen on supporting Uhuru, although they have had their own issues. But you know, President Uhuru is a political son of Mzee Moi. Then Gideon is a biological son. They have issues, internal issues with DP William Ruto. But I don't see them tilting towards the opposition, which is NASA. Then Bomet, Isaac Ruto is in Jubilee, but he's not come out clearly to say that he's joining NASA. He's been hosting NASA, but he's not had the moral courage to stand up and say that he will abandon Jubilee and take his chama mashinani to the opposition. Then you have now. Yeah?
All right, Martin, thank you very much for helping us dissect that. I wish we had more time to take a look at this. Martin Ndate is a political analyst joining us live from our City Center studios. Let's go back to our previous story on matters education, where a new report on public universities has revealed shocking levels of academic theft in some institutions. And the university's audit report, released on Thursday by Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, detailed how students and institutions conspire to go around the set standards of quality. This is a conversation I was having here with Professor Tom Odhiambo, a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Thanks so much for staying on for this second bit of the bulletin. You were mentioning something very important. You think this is a good move by the Ministry of Education, and especially Dr. Fred Matiang'i, but it's how it's been done. This audit was conducted for about 3 weeks to 1 month. Was this enough time for them to look at the entire system of education, university education in this country?
No, definitely not. The point is, you're talking about so many universities. Mm-hmm. You're talking about public universities, private universities, you're talking about universities that are in the making. Mm-hmm. You can't wake up one morning and claim that in 2 weeks, even if we were to give you 1 month, you would not be able to audit the universities. You will not be able to audit how degrees are awarded, the process of teaching, the process of recruitment, the process of promotion, the research capacities in these universities, the quality of education on offer. So yes, good intentions, absolutely unconvincing methodology, and some kind of not very convincing conclusions. Because a lot of these conclusions are things that have been on the streets, they have been in the newspapers, they are online. We know very well that there are universities where you have one permanent member of staff and 5 part-time lecturers. We know that you have universities where students don't do cuts.
Yeah.
Students don't understand that cuts mean continuous assessment tests. So they do one cut. Really? How is it continuous when it's one? We know that degrees have been being handed out to people, you know.
Yeah.
People register for a degree. They appear in class for about half the time. Half the time they are not in class because half the time the lecturers are not around.
Yeah.
And then they graduate. So the tragedy here is that the watchman, which is Commission for University Education, has woken up and said, no, I've not been watching. This is real.
They're cleaning up their own mess.
No, it's really, they are not cleaning up their own mess. They're actually publicly confessing we've not been watching. Under our watch, all this tragedy has been happening. This is terrifying. In other professions, I mean, this is tragic. Think about a doctor saying, oh, I was really with the patient in the clinic, but I didn't take the pressure, the blood pressure, so sorry, the patient died. Wouldn't you be condemning the patient? So this is now the watchman saying, I wasn't guarding, sorry. So do we trust what then the watchman is saying has been happening under his watch or her watch? This is the tragedy of the report.
In the event that degrees are revoked, are we expecting this move by CUE and the Ministry of Education to attract lawsuits?
They will be sued. Remember that universities are actually run by councils. The councils are appointed on behalf of the citizens of Kenya. So any degree awarded by a university should have been approved by the council through the Senate, isn't it? And these are legal entities. So when the student comes to the university, they entrust the system to be morally upright, or what they call in building, to have integrity. So if there is swindling around and the student then gets the degree, who is to blame? It is the university. And the university therefore can't wake up in the morning and say, we have been swindled by the student, and then we awarded the student a degree, but now we are recalling the degree. That's really lazy thinking. Don't you think so? It is lazy thinking. So you can imagine how many of these students are consulting their lawyers.
Yes.
You can
Already?
imagine, yes, you can imagine how many universities are worried because this is internal rot that has been going on for so many years. People have known about this, but people have kept quiet because it's the way fraud happens throughout the country and nobody takes the blame. So I'm supposing that even the threat that degrees will be revoked is just a public relations exercise. But now when people become sober, it will be very difficult to do that.
As a lecturer, you have been in the system for quite a long time. You observe this every day. What do you think the ministry should have done differently if really they were honest about wanting to clean up the whole system?
It's about consultation. It's about Commission for University Education holding the councils and the university managements responsible. It's about really, it's high time we involve all sectors of the society in the way our universities are run. So I would have expected really the ministry to take this quite carefully, look at sample cases instead of, this is like a universal condemnation.
Yeah.
You can imagine how difficult it is to walk out here saying that I'm going to university to study, or to walk out here saying I'm a lecturer, you see. So it should have taken some time.
All right.
There should have been painful measures to be taken, but you should have, before you do surgery, you should really make sure that the patient doesn't feel so much pain. But this is like, there'll be a lot of pain.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us. Professor Tom Odhiambo, lecturer at the University of Nairobi. This is definitely a story we will be following up on. And there's actually panic that some degrees might actually been revoked. So we will be on the lookout for that for you. Moving on, High Court Judge George Odunga has disqualified himself from hearing a dispute between the opposition and the Electoral Commission over audit of the voter register. Justice George Odunga ruled that although the grounds advanced by IEBC seeking his disqualification were not sufficient, he acted on his own motion to transfer the case to Justice Enoch Chacha of the Constitutional Division. He explained that referring the matter to the Chief Justice would have lengthened its determination, yet IEBC was working under strict timelines. IEBC wanted Odunga to quit the case on grounds that he would deliver a similar decision to the ballot papers case. All right, let's now speak to Apollo Mboya, an advocate and the former chairperson of LSK, joining us live from our city center studios. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. This latest developments from the courts and matters to do with the IEBC and Justice George Odunga removing himself willingly from this particular case. How do you describe that particular move from him?
Thank you very much. Just a slight correction. I was the former CEO of the Law Society of Kenya.
Yes, sure.
Coming back to Justice Odunga, Justice Odunga exercised his discretion judiciously. Judges, whenever parties have cast aspersion to the integrity of a judge, it's always important that the judge does what Odunga did. And he did the correct thing, give it to another judge, then to take over and give proper direction. But
most of the cases that have been taken to court, the other day we saw human rights activist of Okia Omtata trying to lengthen the days for voter registration. We have another case that stopped the ballot paper tendering process, and the IEBC has constantly complained that this is slowing down their processes. Are we abusing the legal system where everything happens and we run to the court, and looking at the fact that we are going into polls on August 8th?
No, not at all, not at all. What we are seeing is that the space that has been opened by the new constitution, the constitution says that whenever the constitution is threatened to be violated, any person, and that's the word that is used, any person then can approach the court and to address those particular issues. With regard to the cases against IEBC, I have to blame IEBC. On the question of tendering for the voter registration and the voting material, IEBC did not have commissioners. Cases have been decided that in a commission, when there are no commissioners, there's no commission. That is the same decision that was taken with regard to Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. It was wrong for the CEO of IEBC to continue contracting when there was no commissioners. And in that instance, the judge said, an empty office cannot purport to contract. So the IEBC made their own bed, they must sleep on it.
Is it a fault in how they are interpreting the law in most of these instances? Because in the past few months, they've been taken to court by a lot of people and institutions.
For me, I think it's lack of consultation or just pure arrogance that is being displayed by the Secretariat of IEBC at that time. Now that they are commissioners, we expect that everything will run according to the law. And the decisions that have come from court are solid. And even the decision by IEBC then now to request the judge to recuse himself and refer the matter to the Chief Justice to empanel a bench of 3 judges was not done in good faith. And I think the judge saw that, refused to refer the matter to the Chief Justice, but decided to transfer it to another judge to give direction on it.
Paul, thank you very much for joining us. And as he corrects me, he's the former CEO of the Law Society of Kenya and an advocate. Thank you for